What happens when a pollster becomes a legislator? How does a career exploring and measuring public opinion help serve Canadians as a senator? Welcome back to the Polling and Public Opinion podcast. I'm your instructor, David Coletto. Senator Dr. Donna Dasko was appointed to the Senate by Prime Minister Trudeau on June 6, 2018. Prior to her appointment, she was Senior Vice President at Environics Research Group, where she led major research studies for federal and provincial governments, private sector clients, and NGOs. Senator Dasko is also a co-founder and former national chair of Equal Voice, a non-partisan organization aimed at electing more women in Canada. Senator Dasko joined me on the podcast to discuss her career as a pollster and how her experience, that experience she gained over years of studying public opinion, has impacted her outlook and her work as a senator at the center of our national public policy-making institutions. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. I think it was an interesting and rare look at someone who has straddled both sides of the political and public affairs world in Canada. Well, Senator Dasko, thanks so much for joining me in this podcast. I know the students and listeners are going to be so interested in your story. So thank you, and I hope you're doing well.
I'm doing well, thank you, and I'm really happy to be here. I'm looking forward to the discussion, and I was teaching a course at the University of Toronto for a couple of years before I came to the Senate. So. It's challenging teaching. There's a lot of work, but I really appreciate the invitation. So nice to be here.
Well, thank you for being here. I've been starting our conversations with folks with a question to gauge as someone who spent a large part of your career, almost all your career, exploring public opinion, talking to Canadians. Do you have an overarching philosophy or framework that you use when you approach the topic, when you approach the work that guides you or kind of serves as an anchor for your approach to studying public opinion?
Well, of course, every study that we do has a specific goal and purpose. So, when you're working for a client, as you have to understand what the purpose of the study is, and what is the goal, what are you trying to learn for a particular purpose. But just overall, I would say that I always felt that, we have to start with the data. And if you're going to understand any issue in public opinion, whatever it may be, you start with the public opinion survey data. I always wanted to get as much data as possible. So that meant asking as many questions as were needed, usually not just one, because I don't think you can understand almost anything with just one question. Ask a number of questions. Look at how the data falls out, look at the demographics, look at who supports this and that or opposes it. And also, if you're lucky enough, we can have the tracking data too. So if you really want to understand an issue, I think it's really important if you can try to track it over time and just see how it evolves, because that adds another element to it. So that's where you start, and that's where you build. And then you use that data for your analysis and for your understanding of an issue. Sometimes people will say, oh, well, Canadians, you ask them this and they say this, and then you ask them something else on the same topic, they say something else. So obviously, people are confused, or they don't, the public is out of it or whatever. I never accepted that view, ever. I always knew that just about everything you ask people can add to the understanding of the full picture. And then you proceed, from there. So, I was always lucky to be able, to do a more fulsome set of questions and research on surveys. And that's always what I wanted to do. Of course, it's not always possible, but it's the ideal. So that's kind of the philosophy I start with, and then you build out from there.
So over the past 30 years that you've been studying this, we'll talk about your past 2 years in a bit in the Senate and what that brings to the job. But how have you observed changes in Canadian public opinion, if at all, over that period, and what aspects in particular really stand out as meaningful for our audience to really appreciate, what's changing and what's not?
Well, I most certainly have seen changes, and these would have to be in the category of long-term trends and how Canadian society has changed and how public opinion reflects that and changes with it. So one thing for sure I've seen is the growth in diversity, and I would say acceptance and respect for diversity in Canadian society. We're talking about attitudes toward women, toward racial minorities, ethnic minorities, disabled people, Indigenous people, all of the minority groups in the society. When I think back to when I was growing up, and so many people were kind of living with stereotypes that were negative, and we've seen, a real trend toward acceptance of diversity and not just acceptance, but embrace of it as well. And I think that's been a huge trend. Now, I look, for example, at some of the work, when I was in Environics, some of the work I did was looking at Canadian attitudes toward immigrants and immigration. And there were a lot of questions I developed in the early years, and we were able to track them over the years. And we just saw really significant changes. I mean, maybe every year there'd be a point or two, would change, but you add it all up after a few decades, and you have profound change. And I mean, there it is. It's right there. So what's the beauty of this is that it's actual evidence, right? Like, it's not just somebody's opinion that says things have got better, or a lot of people also say things have got worse. You actually have this and you say, look, this tells you something, and this is really important. So I think that's probably the biggest trend that I've seen over time. It's, obviously reflected in public opinion. But, a lot of other changes too. I mean, we've seen the growth of certain issues that we've never seen before, like environmental concerns. I mean, that was never on the radar. Now it's absolutely vitally important in the political sector, in the political sphere. The growth of concern with ethics, ethical behavior, and the scrutiny that politicians get, and the expectations that people have been have increased for ethical behavior. Of course, the world's not perfect, so we're never going to get perfection from from everybody, but that has been a trend too. So a number of these kinds of trends we've definitely seen over time, and and that's what we see in public opinion. I find, that's why I found working in the sector to be, ultimately quite gratifying. Not just seeing those things, but also being able, as I was as a pollster, to work on some really interesting files with clients whose goals I embraced. Like I worked in tobacco control for many years, and I saw growing attitudes against tobacco, and the policy development was very serious. And I was really happy to be part of it, to provide the research input into so many of these efforts. So that's just one example, but there are many others where the work that I did was very gratifying. So you just see, I would see progress in areas like that too. So that's part of the change that we've seen over time, that I've seen over time.
And thinking about today, then, there's a number of forces in the world that are forcing people, Canadians, to respond and react and think about how it affects their lives. Is there one in particular that you're watching most closely that you think is something that, whether you're a student of politics, whether you're a public opinion researcher, a policymaker, or a senator like yourself, that we really need to that we really need to pay attention to, that either has you worried or optimistic? It could be both in a way.
Yes. Yes. Well, I think the whole issue of growing right-wing populism is something that we've seen in a number of countries. That is very worrying. I try to keep on top of those developments. I'm very interested in especially how Eastern European countries are evolving, but also Western European, also the US. Populism is a development that is anti-democratic, is authoritarian, and also has, in every case, ethnocentrism and nativism as part of populism. We've seen this in European countries, also with former President Trump. Now, that being said, I don't believe that we have really confronted this in Canada to any extent. And so in that sense, I think we've been fortunate, lucky, smart, whatever the case may be. But it is a development that is seen worldwide, and it's very troubling. How we deal with that, I'm not sure, but if we have to follow the countries and try to exert positive influence in any way we can through governments or NGOs or whatever the case may be, that's important because I think many of us want the world to develop in a different way, and so that's the biggest concern I have, at least with regard to the public sphere, public life, politics,
Mm-hmm.
and social development, because social development is tied to that too.
Well, speaking of public life, in June of 2018, you were appointed by Prime Minister Trudeau to the Senate. And so before we get into, how your previous career, and not to say that you're not a pollster anymore, you are, but you're just, I think, using it in different ways now as a senator. For the audience who maybe doesn't know much about the day-to-day work of a senator, I'm curious, how's that experience been? If you can give us a little insight into what your typical day is like, and I assume this past year has been very different than the previous year, given the pandemic. But maybe give us a little bit of what it's like to be a senator right now, and where you find real pleasure in the job, and maybe some friction that frustrates you sometimes, if anything.
Yes. Well, what's it like? So typical day in the Senate is go into my office in Ottawa, and then maybe meet with people, groups, or individuals who are promoting a certain piece of legislation or a cause or an issue or something along those lines. And then we spend the afternoons in the Senate chamber. So in the Senate chamber, we start by looking at dealing with government legislation. That always takes the priority. So, and any particular bill might be at different stage, first, second, third reading. And so we will be looking at that and trying to make changes to it or give speeches on it, depending on where the stage is at. So we start with the government business in the Senate, and then we deal with the Senate, what's called the Senate business. So senators themselves have various initiatives they're working on, inquiries, motions, and so on. And so we kind of deal with that. So that's a typical day that can go on for 2 hours, or it can go for 10 hours, depending on the day. After that, then we go into committees. So I'm an independent senator, part of the Independent Senators Group, and we are asked to serve on 2 of a total of 17 Senate committees. So we more or less get our choice, and then we will have committee meetings. So what do committees do? Senate committees look at legislation in detail. Every bill that comes to the Senate from the government goes to a certain committee, and that committee will call witnesses. We ask people to talk about the bill and give us their views and so on. So we can either be dealing with bills, or the Senate itself launches studies, inquiries into, could be any topic. There have been some very well-known Senate studies, like the Senate studies on a study on poverty and mental health in the past. And again, we do this by calling witnesses and doing research, commissioning research, and so on. So we will end up coming out with a report based on the Senate studies. So that's the committee work. And then in the other hours that we spend, we we'll be researching bills and reading up and so on, and pursuing interests outside of the Senate, advocacy, regional representation, which is very important for senators from small provinces. So there's all kinds of outside activities as well. And there we have the chance to do things that interest us in particular. So that's a typical Senate day.
Is there any aspect of the job that you didn't expect when you before you were appointed, that you now realize, is very different than your expectations?
Yes, I can tell you that very specifically that I was absolutely shocked, I would say, to see the extent to which process issues are important, how things are done. The rules of the Senate are voluminous. It seems to be almost impossible to learn them. And every day you learn something new. And then even senators who've been there for many years will say, yeah, I just learned something new yesterday about some other obscure rule or order or whatever it may be, or practice or procedure. So it's really something, because very arcane. So it's not as if you can just go there and study policy and say, oh yeah, this is really important. You have to sort of learn all this stuff to be effective too. So how to make interventions, when can you stand up right out of the blue and say something, when can you not do that? And then all of the rules around committees and how they work and so on. So I have to say that's a real shock.
Now, I've tried to do some of my research, and I can't find any other senator that I'm aware of that has been a pollster before being appointed to the Senate. So you, I think, and maybe somebody will correct me at some point, but it appears to me that you are the first, at least prominent professional pollster to now sit in the Senate. How has that affected your work? I think to me, that's the question I wanted to ask you the most in this conversation is both as an individual in terms of how you approach issues, how you approach your responsibilities, but also how do your colleagues in the Senate work with you or see you as being helpful in the process of reviewing that legislation, developing policy, being that check in a way on the government in the House of Commons?
Well, it's definitely affected me, definitely, without a doubt. So now, but sometimes in ways that may not seem apparent. It's not as if I'm out there commissioning polls on every topic. That doesn't happen. But what I always try to do is, we have bills on every conceivable topic. So what I try to do is I try to think about what is public opinion on this topic. Like, what would it be? Or what is it? So sometimes there's no data. Other times there might be data out there in the public sphere that I'm able to look at. So that's really important. So, but it's more of a perspective, thinking about it, trying to, I know it sounds weird saying first I'm a data person and now I'm just going to imagine public opinion. I don't want it to come across that way, but I try to think in a public opinion perspective. And I'll just give you an example. We get emails from stakeholders, interest groups, very, very frequently on the bills that we're getting. And I always look at those with caution, because sometimes some of my colleagues might think that this actually reflects public opinion. The volume of emails we're getting on a particular topic and the views expressed, that somehow those views are prevalent in the public space, so that those are the prevalent opinions of Canadians. But I know intimately from my research, from being a public opinion pollster, that those views may well not be the views of Canadians at all. And so you approach these perspectives, the stakeholders and interest groups, with a great deal of, with a critical perspective. Now, of course, everybody has the right to express their views. They can come to our committees and express their views. They can send us emails. Perfectly legitimate. All of that is perfectly legitimate. But, sometimes those folks will say they represent public opinion, but often often they don't, or they may not. Let me just give you an example. We were dealing with the gun registration bill in 2019, and it was a bill that just changed some of the registration requirements for firearms. It didn't have a lot of stuff in it, really. But the gun lobby, the people who own guns, didn't like the bill. Well, they bombarded us with emails and so to the point where you start to wonder what was actually going on. So one day, one of my colleagues, who was actually, I wasn't, working that much on the bill, but one of my colleagues was, and he came to me one day and he said, "You know what? I've just discovered this public opinion poll on this topic, and Canadians support what's in the bill by a huge majority." He said, "That is exactly it. That is absolutely vitally important for, and he said, "I can't believe this. I'm going to put this in my speeches now. I'm going to make sure this is entirely prominent in the work that he was doing," which was, I think he was one of the Senate leaders on the bill. He said, this is really important because, it went against the vast amount of lobbying we had on the other side. So that's just another example of how public opinion can, how I kind of deal with it is always putting into perspective what we are hearing from people who are lobbying one way or the other, whatever side of the issue may be on. And also, the public opinion perspective, I really feel I have it there in everything. Now, as an independent senator, this is even more important because we are not directed by a caucus, a political party caucus in the Senate. There are members of a political party, of one political party in the Senate. They are directed in their votes by their party. Independent senators are not. So in fact, I've got a lot more liberty and freedom to take this into account, and to take a lot of different factors into account when we deliberate on bills. I mean, there's a lot of considerations. As you know from doing public opinion research, it is never, or almost never, the only consideration in policy. It is one of the things that is taken into account. And that is the way I approach it as well. I think about public opinion, look into it, try to find research that will help me understand what that is, and then take it into account as one of the factors.
And I think it's a really important point, because I mean, for years, this is not a new phenomenon. People have criticized the Senate as an institution because of its lack of direct connection to an electorate, right? You're appointed. Yeah. And you have, the Senate has been appointed forever. It's been, its structure. And I think, taking partisanship out of it was an innovation that has not only, I think, elevated, in my view, this is my view, the Senate as an institution in which people pay far more attention to what happens in that chamber than ever before, because of senators like yourself who have an independence, right? And have, party is not the first frame or lens by which you approach an issue. It's
Yes.
Is this in the best interest of the country? Is this, is this something the public supports? And that's really, I think, really interesting.
Yes, that's true.
Do your colleagues seek you out for insight on these kinds of questions because of your experience? Do you find?
Yes. Of course, not all of my colleagues, just as a caveat, not all of my colleagues are sort of into the public opinion space the way I am. But yes, I have assisted some of my colleagues with actually developing polls. I think I've encouraged some of them to undertake public opinion research, which I feel is just great because, they have. I've had some colleagues who have commissioned polls, and I think I've played a role in that. And yes, they'll come to me and we'll talk about public opinion research on one or another topic. It's also, of course, there's a lot of chatter and gossip about politics. And I'm always, I always was, even though, my company, Environics, never worked for any political parties, but we worked for the media. Mm-hmm. So as a political junkie, I was able to do all this polling on elections and politics, and that was that kind of suited me just fine because I was a political junkie, loved to follow politics and loved to be able to participate in that way. And so, of course, there is that element as well.
You mentioned something, and this is the last topic before we look to close, is you mentioned you had commissioned research. Some of your other Senate colleagues had commissioned, I shouldn't say research, public opinion research, which I think is, again, a new thing for senators to be doing. And I think it's because you're independent. And if the Senate was primarily divided into party caucuses, there wasn't maybe a need to do polling because the party might be doing it, or they're going to inform you what the public thinks about these. How
yes, or not inform you.
Or not. That's a good point. Or just to keep you, ignorant and just say vote this way. Anyways, we don't have to get into the partisanship there. But I find it fascinating, right? That as a policymaker, as a legislator, that you've taken it among yourself to use the budget you have to actually explore what Canadians think about things before you not perhaps vote on an issue, but as you explore, as you said, investigate different topics that are important to you and the Senate colleagues. So I know there's been, I don't know if I'll call it controversy, but there's certainly been some debate about whether that's appropriate for senators to do or not. I have my clear view that I think it's a great thing. I think it's another source of information for folks to make. But how have you dealt with that issue and the debate that swirled around whether senators should be doing this or not?
Well, of course, it's entirely appropriate because we are able to commission research on any public policy issue. And public opinion research is entirely legitimate, just like any other kind of research is legitimate on the public policy issues we face. And the Senate has, they accept that. They accept that it is it's a legitimate activity. But the fact that not that many senators have done it it's a bit of a shock to some when they see a senator commissioning public opinion research. I hope to do more of it. I intend to do more of it. I did commission a very significant set of questions in 2019 about the Senate because I wanted to understand, and so did my colleagues in the Independent Senators Group. We wanted to understand what Canadians felt about the new processes for appointing senators. Prime Minister Trudeau, so many prime ministers have tried to reform the Senate, but Prime Minister Trudeau was able to actually do it because it didn't require constitutional change. But, he set up a review panel to take applications from Canadians to become senators. And then there is a competition, and then when there's a vacancy, then the competition happens, and then the senator is chosen through a competitive process. So I wanted to learn what Canadians thought about that, what their image of the Senate was. There was some tracking data, and what they thought about the new processes. And so that was the poll. And so we certainly found that opinions actually about the Senate were still negative overall, but had moved substantially in a positive direction. So there was definitely positive movement. That's good. That was good. And then I found in the poll that Canadians did support the kinds of changes that were made in terms of the new Senate appointment process. And they did think that future governments should continue with this process of picking senators. So that was really important because, we independent senators think it is a good thing. And so it was really, really great to see that supported in public opinion. All that being said, we know that the Senate is not top of mind for anybody. And so, we have to continue to make the case that this is a good move, but we certainly have public opinion on our side, and that's important.
Yeah, and my view is I think it usually serves the Senate well when it's not top of mind, because when it is, it's often for a negative reason and not one that's positive, and that you're able to do your work and contribute and improve legislation and explore ideas, I think in such a thoughtful way now with more independence that you've actually, I was for a long time someone who felt that an elected Senate didn't make sense in a democracy. And I've come a long way to changing that view, I think in large part from the work that you and your particularly independent Senate colleagues have been doing. So there you go. Even someone like me who's like political scientist and has sort of thought about this a lot can change their minds on something so big.
Well, an elected Senate would change everything. And, if Canadians want that change, fine. But that certainly wasn't envisioned by the fathers of Confederation who created the Senate as it is, as an appointed body, because they didn't want the Senate to compete with the House of Commons. If you get an elected Senate, it will do that. That is just the nature of it. The
nature of human instincts, right? To compete.
Yeah, you're elected. Wow, you've got the power to do things, and it would change our system radically. Maybe at some point Canadians might want that, but I don't think.
I don't think they want the constitutional fight that comes along with it too.
That's no, it's very tough, as you know, like for us to get there. I mean, Prime Minister Harper would have liked to change it. He wanted to have an elected Senate, but in the end, the Supreme Court said, sorry, if you are trying to make that change, you have to change the Constitution with all of the difficulties that entails.
Yeah. So my last question is, it's a completely separate subject. You've spent a good part of your life working to get more women elected to legislatures across the country. With your co-founder of Equal Voice, you served as a national chair. I also, as someone in market research and polling, I can't help but realize there's not also a lot of women in leadership roles in this industry. You were one of the few who was not only, a senior vice president at the top of Environics, but also prominent in the media and sort of a spokesperson and a commentator on public opinion. I guess two questions for you. There's a lot of very, very engaged and bright young women in my class who I am excited to teach. What advice would you give to young women, but also anyone, not just women, but particularly women who are thinking about getting into market research, public opinion research, but look around and see there's not a lot of them around, particularly in leadership roles?
Well, there could be a long or a short answer to this. Certainly when I was beginning in the industry, which was in its infancy, but was growing rapidly. We did see the phenomenon of, most companies would have sort of a pollster guru at the top, CEO. A lot of companies developed that way, and that person was almost always a male. Environics was a bit of a variation on that theme, but I do think the world has changed, and I think I would really encourage women to, if you're interested in the social sciences, politics, research, I would encourage anybody to work in this industry, because there's so much interesting work that you can do. And I know that it's, I know that the environment has changed, and I think there are many opportunities. Also, if you are a researcher, professional researcher, you have other opportunities too. You can work for Statistics Canada, or you can do research for NGOs, non-governmental organizations. If you're a researcher, depending on your discipline, there's a lot of opportunities there too. So I think the world has changed, and I would encourage women to step forward and get involved and think about a career in this business.
Yeah, my view has been, I cannot possibly, write a report, analyze public opinion if I don't represent 50% of the population in the thinking about what this means. Like, I think you produce better research when you have diversity around that table, analyzing data, asking questions. It's not just even analyzing the data, it's also in the questions themselves. I come as a male, white male from very privileged background with a very clear bias in how I view the world. I know that. And so having a team of that's more diverse, that brings women's perspective, I think just produces better research. So I need and want more partners who are women and bring different perspectives. I think it's really important for the industry to encourage it for that reason as well.
And the public opinion side and the market research side too. I mean, and that's a big chunk of the way the business, business evolves, and it's a big chunk of the business too. So. Well,
Senator Dasko, thank you for your spending some time. The generosity of your time is the thing you have the least of these days, and I appreciate you sharing it with us. I wish you all the best as you tackle some big issues coming ahead as we figure out how to get out of this pandemic and recover. And you're going to play a big role in helping push that. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I really enjoyed talking with you, and thanks to the class for listening, and I wish you all well. Take care.